Fossil fuel burnout, uncharacteristic weather patterns, toxic air brought on by rapid development, progress that shows no signs of stopping. The impact of each of these factors is democratic. It's secular, it affects you, it affects me. So what are some of the things the world's oldest democracy is doing to blunt the force of climate change? We traveled to the northeast of the United States, where, tucked into one corner of the University of Maine's campus, is a nondescript building. Inside it, a group of students and researchers are working on harnessing wind energy, but with a twist. The university's Advanced Structures and Composites Center is developing a floating wind turbine. Once complete, this will likely be the first full-scale floating wind project in the Americas. And this isn't just a whim. In September 2016, the Obama administration identified offshore wind energy as an important stratagem for combating climate change. But why a floating wind farm as opposed to a fixed one? We got our hard hats on to understand the concept a little better.
The design that we have is a floating wind turbine technology using concrete hulls. And we build these hulls like we build concrete bridges. So we're using the bridge industry to build these hulls in many ways to drive costs out. Our studies in the US have shown that this technology will reduce the cost of the hull by a factor of 2 compared to other competing technologies in the United States today. And those numbers can also be very, very similar in other countries in the world. But we haven't really looked at India, for example, and so forth. But certainly in the US, we can drive the cost out by a factor of 2 for the hull. For floating technologies, the cost of foundations do not change as much with water depth. Plus, as you go farther offshore, sometimes the wind regimes get to be better and better. So you have better winds as you go farther offshore. Certainly off the coast of Maine, that's true. So if you have better winds as you go farther offshore, so it may not necessarily mean you're going to have more expensive power.
When it comes to countries that receive ample sunlight though, why would they consider wind energy as an alternative to solar?
I think we have to all look at all resources that we have today, because nobody really has a crystal ball can know in 10 years or 20 years what the cost of these energies would be. The cost of solar has been dropping significantly, but so has the cost of offshore wind and land-based wind, and other forms of technology as well, storage and so forth. So I think right now, both of these technologies, both wind and solar, are very close in terms of costs, at least for land-based wind. For offshore wind, it would be a bit more expensive today, but those costs are dropping as well significantly. So I think we all need to look at all the options we have in front of us, and rather than invest in only one technology. It's almost like when you're buying stocks in the stock market. You don't put all your money into one stock. You try to look at a number of stocks, because you really don't know at the end what works the best.
As per Dagger, potential offshore energy available to the United States could power the country 4 times over. There's just a minor detail keeping this energy bank from becoming a reality. It's called cost.
The goal of the research we've been doing here for the last decade is to develop offshore wind farms, floating offshore wind farms, that can compete on the grid with no subsidies. And that's the key to our research, is compete on the grid with no subsidies. So our goal in the research is to be sub 10 cents a kilowatt hour for the energy connected to the grid. That includes the offshore cable and the cost of actually interconnecting the farm to the grid. 3 things: the wind resource, the population centers, and energy costs. And then and that's how you locate, if you wish, where it makes sense to put these farms.
The center has received nearly $23 million in grants from the United States Energy Department. In May last year, the department deemed the project eligible for a further $39.9 million. The figures demonstrate a commitment to harnessing potential energy in the future. But what about the present? Are there initiatives being undertaken to promote sustainable living in the here and now? The answer was waiting for us nearly 4,000 kilometers away, a distance we covered by plane and bus, through snowstorms and sub-zero degree temperatures. This is not a movie set that we're on. We're actually at the Earthship biotecture in Taos, New Mexico. This is a community of people who are living completely off the grid. What exactly does that mean? Well, we're going to find out right now. From the inside, this could be any other home anywhere in the world. Barring some aesthetic preferences that set one aside from the other, the basic features of each of these homes are the same. For one, they're made from recyclable materials like tires, plastic and glass bottles, and even aluminum cans. A fact that makes for some rather interesting architecture.
Here you can see the tires. So the tires are basically used a little bit like you would use bricks. So generally you put a brick over two other bricks to give it more kind of strength. What happens with these tires is that they're compacted with earth inside. But once we compact them, this kind of will grow. The rubber is going to push at the bottom and it's going to go and shape into the shape of these two at the bottom. All of these put together one on top of the other, and you can see it's also got like a kind of slope going outwards, and that's also to contain whatever earth is behind it, because the particularity with these houses too is that they are buried at the back. So basically this wall is on one side holding everything that's behind it, at the same time it's holding the roof, and at the same time it's thermal mass, which means that once the sun heats up the wall, it's going to accumulate the heat, and then this heat can go back inside the house.
The Earthships are built to trap and preserve power and water on a day-to-day. Solar panels and small windmills generate electricity, which is stored in compact lithium batteries, while large window panes allow natural light to flood in. The building material helps to naturally cool in the summer and heat in the winter. In fact, while we were at the Phoenix Earthship, the nighttime temperatures dipped to -12 degrees Celsius, but a blanket was enough indoors. The use of water is also smartly segregated. Rain and melted snow is stored in large tanks to the rear of the homes, and it's clean enough to use in the kitchen. Drinking water is obviously filtered, but wastewater is also treated when it passes through native species of plants before it's used in the toilets' flushing systems. It then goes through another round of filtration by botanical plants and fish species. But for some residents, life in an Earthship goes beyond these material and ecological benefits.
You're in charge of the power, your water, your sewage treatment, your food production. It's really the ultimate free living that I can see, because it's a home that will take care of you, grow food for you, but allow you to be comfortable and off the grid, not relying on municipalities to take care of your every need. So it's just that sense of taking control of and taking charge of your life.
A two-bedroom Earthship can cost anywhere between $500 to $5,000 to build. Once complete, their utility bills are close to nothing. Yet, there are only a handful of Earthships around the world, many of them in this greater world Earthship community in the New Mexico desert. But with the colony set up in relative isolation, not everything can be done without using non-renewable energy. So it appears that the Earthship biotecture is utilizing just solar energy and recycling water many times over to live this sustainable lifestyle. However, barring that utilization of gasoline to get from point A to point B within the community. Small as this town is, its commitment to using renewable energy goes beyond private enterprise.
2009.
From the outside, this looks like any small-town tune-belting radio station. Sure, it has the stunning Sangre de Cristo mountain range for a backdrop, but that's not the only thing to marvel at when it comes to Taos 101.9 FM. This New Mexico radio station's signal is powered completely by solar energy. In the early 90s, the station upgraded to 1200 watts, and the transmitter was set up on Picurious Peak at 10,801 feet in the state itself. The elevation equaled an uninterrupted signal and rimshot broadcasting leverage. The problem? No grid electricity. The answer? Solar power. The result? A station with one of the largest solar-powered broadcast areas in the world. Homes relying on the sun's energy are becoming more of a reality across the world. But stations like Taos demonstrate how renewable energy can be harnessed for much more. In Taos' case, the station's USP has brought with it interest and curiosity. So much so that they've set up a bar, restaurant and performance venue on the station's premises for a little extra mustard on the side. It was across the state line and into Colorado for our last stop on the climate tour. Behind us right here is the US Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Lab, a facility focused on the utilization of renewable energy across the United States, including technology transfer to a number of industries within the country and, as we hear, in India as well. The NREL is a state-of-the-art facility researching and developing a plethora of clean energy modules. Here, Keith Whipke, the lab program manager of the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Technologies program, took us for a drive aboard Hyundai's F-Cell Tucson to talk more about the technology, its uses, and what's needed to push it further. What do you think is the main thing that's holding people back from purchasing F-Cell technology?
I think at this point it's probably a little bit of the cost being a little higher, and also that they may not have the convenience of lots of fueling stations around them. So it really depends where you live in California. But now in Southern California, the Los Angeles area, as well as up in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area, there are enough stations now that most people who live in that area would have a fueling station close to them. But if you left California and moved to Colorado, for example, you know, unless you could fuel at our research station here, you couldn't fuel your car. So you would need to sell it or bring it and wait. and it's not clear how long it'll be before other states that don't have zero-emission vehicle regulation, like Colorado. We give no credits for deploying zero-emission vehicles here, whereas in California and the Northeast states like New York and Connecticut, they get credited for California by placing vehicles there, at least for a certain period of time, because California wanted a larger number of vehicles. They wanted a national effort, and so they allowed that to happen. Otherwise, it would just be a California activity.
So are you hopeful that pushing more research in this field and collaborating more perhaps with other automotive industry giants would sort of push prices down and therefore get people to opt?
Yes, definitely. There is competition in this area for leadership and for zero-emission vehicle technology, and so the car companies are investing heavily in this, and each of the car companies has invested about $1 billion, and so and they haven't really stopped researching it through the recession of 2008, 9, 10. They continued to invest in the technology even when they could have easily just shut it down. They believed in it for the long term. In fact, Toyota launched their hydrogen fuel cell activity the same year they launched their Toyota Prius hybrid technology in the early 90s. And because of the fueling infrastructure for hydrogen, they went a little slower. They needed to make sure the fueling stations were going to be there before they could sell their car. So it's, you know, similar to a conventional car, except without the shifts.
So the fueling stations on the NREL campus are not commercial, right? You can't.
They are not. There's no credit card swiper. It's really just a research station.
Which country would you say is, you know, perhaps using this technology most aggressively already?
I think the United States is, and after that, maybe Germany or Japan. I'm not sure. Korea has quite a big investment as well, which is why Hyundai is so aggressively pursuing this. So this is the thermal test facility, and this is where we do research on energy storage in the form of batteries.
Batteries that can be utilized
in a car. Yep, yep. So I think Matt Kaiser will be your host here.
As President Donald Trump continues to sign executive orders in a flurry, the status of research on climate change remains fluid. For now, it seems that these private and public sector enterprises will have to soldier on with the spectre of policy change shadowing their every step. With Pratik Suri, Ayesha, Sindhu for WION in the United States.